I'm talking with Heidi Merika, who's one of these most amazing folk who has the ability to connect with the earth, and that seems to be the tenor of all conversation. Heidi, I know that you're a qualified naturopath and a medicinal herbalist, but you have this amazing skill at foraging for food, and so many people wanting to reconnect. Is this a way that people can begin to quietly reconnect, even if it's around their property or on the street, on the verge, roadside verge and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's so many layers to the reconnecting process that come from foraging. So on the most superficial level, you can start foraging just for food and going, okay, I know there's nutrition in these plants, and learning to identify them, and learning to know which ones you can eat and what nutrients are in those plants. Then the next level is, if you're someone, you know, like myself, naturopaths, herbalists, or people who are interested in medicine, doctors and so forth. All these plants also have tremendous nutrition, medicinal capacities as well. So you can go into the medicine of these plants. And so you can use these plants not only to heal yourself nutritionally, but also medicinally. And so I sort of went in at first on a nutritional and a medicinal level, and started looking at some of the research that was out there on these plants, and how they'd been used and how they'd been studied. But what then happened is, over the years, the journey became a lot deeper, and I started having experiences with the plants that went sort of beyond the science. And they've actually taught me so much about our relationship with the earth. And not just with the earth, but it puts a context to the way we relate to everything. And I was really privileged to work with a woman called Pam Montgomery, who came over from America, and she's written a book called Plant Spirit Healing. So I'd had a few experiences on my own, and then I found Pam's book talking about plant spirit healing, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the missing piece from my training as a naturopath and a herbalist. Because when I'd gone into my training as a naturopath, I'd had this, when I was a teenager, I'd read this book called The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. It's about the Arthurian legends. Yep. And the priestesses of Avalon would go and collect the herbs. And when I read that book, it was electrifying for me. Like, it just woke something up in me. And it was like, okay, I have to go and become like a modern day Avalon priestess. So I went off to study naturopathy, thinking, okay, this is the equivalent training available to us today. But at the exact time that I went to study, the herbal medicine degree had just gone from a diploma to a degree. And in order to do that, it had to really prove itself as a modern science. So the paradigm that I went into was really moving away from this folk herbalism and that sort of earth-centered, almost sort of witchy pagan sort of herbalism, into a very academic, rigorously scientific sort of paradigm. And so I sort of, for years, probably about 20 years, was trying to squeeze myself into this square hole that I didn't quite fit into, and struggled really the whole time to do that. And then when I found Pam's book, it was like, this is it. This is the training that I've actually been seeking all this time. And so I went and did some intensive training with Pam. And even though I'd had my own experiences, she sort of showed me how to have more consistent connection with some of those plants and plant energies. And so then I was able to start working with the plants, communicating with them directly, getting their own wisdom directly from the plants, and really learning to listen uh, to nature, really, through the felt sensations in the body, and the intuition and the visions and so forth. And what that has really opened up is this whole way of being in the world, where you become very sensitive to, I guess the word is permission. So learning how to be in nature and be sensitive to, this, you might go and think, oh, I want to pick some dandelion. And, some plants will be like, yes, they're very happy to be picked, and others, no, don't pick that one. Yeah. Some plants will tell you exactly how to pick them. Like there's a plant called fleabane. It's a very tall, upright plant. And when I went to pick that one, it was showing me that I needed to pick every second leaf in an upward spiral, going up around the plant, like these really specific instructions on how to pick the leaves off this plant. And so, yeah, so in this journey...
Can I ask you, what sort of experience, have you had any really profound experience? Because, I was just mentioning how recent I was in the UK and had quite a profound experience reconnecting with nature and trees particularly, and these sentient beings. So even these little weeds are sentient beings in their own right, and sending messages to you. What has been the most profound experience you've had with a weed? I know that sounds funny, but what has really hit you at any particular time during your inquiry, your curiosity, and your education?
Yeah, it's, there's a few sort of standout experiences, and some I can talk about and some I can't. Sometimes you get shown things and that's just for you. Some stuff is designed to be shared at a particular time, and some isn't. But I had an incredible experience with nettles. When I first started doing my wildcrafting course, I was going to do it on a particular property, and just the week before the course was about to start, oh, that's right, the day before that even, I'd done a meditation for the group and the course, and I was like, okay, what do we need? What's the plan of healing for this group? And what had come in my meditation was nettles. And so I went out to this property that I was going to do the course at, and I'd seen quite a few other plants out there that we could have foraged, but the block had been slashed when I got there and there was nothing there. And so I was in a bit of a panic, and when you start working with earth medicine, with nature, it's all about synchronicities. All these synchronicities just keep coming, and you just keep following the synchronicities, I guess, and that's where the magic is. So just the week before that, I'd met another woman who lived near that, who had said, oh, well, I've got plenty of weeds out at my place. If you ever want weeds, come and visit me. I've got this big 20, I think she had like nearly 100 acres out near Kenilworth. And so that the place that I was going to go to, I couldn't use anymore. And I was driving around sort of Balloomba, Kenilworth, sort of Bellow Park area, looking for a place that we could go. And I'd only met this woman once, very briefly, in a cafe, and I kept finding little patches of things, and but I was like, kept going, no, it's not right, it's not right. And my daughter, who was with me, started to get late in the day, and she was like, Mum, what are you even looking for? We found this, and this. And I was like, I don't know, I think I'm looking for nettles. And she was like, well, just ring Danielle, who's the woman who had said she had lots of weeds on her property. So finally, in desperation, I rang her, and she said, yeah, come over. And so we went over, and she was like, just walk down over the back paddock, down through the riverbed, across onto this little spot. And we walked over there, and we walked into this grove, and it was the most prolific, magnificent patch of nettles and wild raspberry that I'd ever seen in my life. Like, there were literally nettle leaves as big as my hand in this grove, and, you know, above my head in height, like just so big and so beautiful. And the light and the joy that came from them in that first meeting was just like sunlight, like this bright golden light, just so full of joy. And it was just like, I was so glad to have found them, and they were so glad to have found me. And it was this like, oh, we found each other at last. It was quite profound. And then I went back with my wildcrafting groups every year. Actually, I didn't go this year, which was the first year in about 5 or 6 years, I think, that I haven't been there. But that spot became a very sort of sacred place to me. It became like a very fundamental place that I did my work and did my teaching. And so, yeah, they sort of, through all this series of circumstances, they called me to that place. And so that was, yeah, just one example. I guess that there's lots of little ones and a few.
And I understand about the secrecy, and it is a very personal thing. It's like when you interact with a tree, it's a very, very personal thing. So tell me, I know you went out to your backyard and you've got a handful of weeds with you right now, but just before we talk more about them, let's go back to the nettles. What are nettles good for? Why were you drawn to those nettles on that particular day?
Yeah, I think on that particular day, it was really about they were drawing me to that spot. That spot ended up being really vital for my work and for my journey, for the journey that I've been on with the plants and sharing that with the group. So it was about the nettles, but it was also just about that location as well. So I think that's more what that particular circumstance was. But nettles in themselves are incredibly nutritious, you know, really high in protein, really high in iron, really high in silica, all the minerals. So they've always been used as a really nutritive food, and they've got an extensive history of use all around the world, particularly in Europe, where their use is very strong as a forage food. Particularly useful for convalescence, used a lot in pregnancy and breastfeeding and postpartum. They have, and interestingly, they grow there with the wild raspberry, which is also a uterine tonic, helps stimulate breast milk, and is also like a female tonic that's used in pregnancy as well. So that area was a very powerful grove of sacred feminine energy, and really had these plants in there that were really about women's health. And you know, there was a few others, but they were really the ones that were most prolific in that space. The nettles are also like good for antihistamine, so good for allergies, good for enlarged prostate in men, really good for remineralizing teeth in cases of tooth decay. They have a long history of use in arthritis. Like, people would actually get fresh nettles if they had arthritic pain. They would actually hit their swollen joints with the stinging nettles, and the sting of the nettle would bring blood flow and histamine to that area and actually help alleviate the arthritic pain. So quite a lot of uses there for nettles. Yeah,
just beautiful. I mean, this is, I have a very strong instinct that we're going to go back to that. Yes, we've got all this other stuff going on, you know, with the pharmaceutical companies and vaccinations. We've got all that stuff going on, but I have a funny feeling that's going to pale in significance when we are forced to go back to this whole our origins in this regard. What have
Yeah.
you got there in your hand? What have you got?
Yes.
Let's just
So much.
quickly talk about what you found in your backyard this morning for us.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Like I've started writing a talk that I'm going to be doing next year about weeds as climate activists, because I think I agree with you there. I think as we move into the sort of climate crisis that we're in, and it really gets into full swing, then we're really going to have to change our behaviours quite significantly, and I don't think there's any way of really avoiding that now. And so there's so much literally growing in our backyards, and unless you live in a flat that's just completely surrounded by concrete, I can almost guarantee you've got something in your backyard that is food and medicine. And so I've just ran outside literally and just grabbed 5 little plants here. So where we live here on the Sunshine Coast, this farmer's friend or cobbler's pegs is very prolific. So you can see probably there the spiky seed head. This is what sticks in your clothes, gets all up your pant leg, stuck in all the animal hair. If our dog gets stuck in these, then we have to shave him. He's a Labradoodle and you just can't get them out. But this plant, it's everywhere. And at first I was like not a big fan of this plant, and then I started researching it for this book that I've just written on plants, and it's so incredible, and I've come to be one of my favorites now. It's tremendously, like, it's off the charts high in protein. So the African government actually introduced this. The botanical name is Bindens pilosa, for anyone who's wanting to look at the technical research. And so they introduced this Bindens pilosa as a food source in Africa because it's so high in protein, so high in minerals, so incredibly easy to grow. Just self-seeds, and it requires very little maintenance. But the other thing about this plant is it has been shown scientifically, and there's research papers on all of this, to cure at least 7 different kinds of cancer. And now I researched 33 wild weeds in the book, and every single one of them cured cancer. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them had anti-cancer properties. I shouldn't say cured cancer, but had anti-cancer properties. And the incredible thing about the Bindens pilosa is that it didn't just have one mechanism of action in treating cancer. It had like about 6 different mechanisms, 6 different biological pathways where it was doing that, which is why it's effective against such a wide range of cancers. The other thing that it is a potent anti-diabetic herb. So this works on blood sugar regulation, both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. And so it's a potent anti-inflammatory. So I've been using it. I've been making tinctures from it and tablets, powdered capsules from it, and using them in my practice. And I've been using it a lot with anyone who has any kind of inflammatory or autoimmune disease. So things like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, these sort of chronic, painful, inflammatory conditions. I've been using this plant a lot because it's such an amazing anti-inflammatory. Wow. And if you look at cancer, diabetes and inflammation, these are, some of the biggest killers in our society today. And here we have this plant that is so prolific and so determined to be around human settlements. It's almost like it's saying, it's wow. So tenacious. Yeah. Like, here I am, yeah. For God's sake, look at me. Yeah. The medicine is right
that's
here.
That's a beautiful story. I mean, that is really fabulous to hear. Yeah. I'll put the Latin name up on the screen shortly. That is amazing. Now, 1 minute to share a message with humanity
Yeah. Okay.
Look, since we last met, which is quite some year, well, what was it, two or 3 years ago, I think, at
Yeah.
World Vegan Day or something like that. I just, you've changed. You're magical. You've become quite magical. So
Yeah.
channel your inner magic, and what message do you and the plants have to share with humanity right now?
Yeah, I think that the message from the me and from the plants, I guess, is really just to trust, and to feel. So I think we really need to come into our bodies and start listening to our internal barometers. And so really taking the time uh, to sit with things and go, how does this feel in my body? Is this, and learn to understand what for you is an internal yes and an internal no. And for, there can be a lot of different ways. Like sometimes for me, a yes is like an upward rising of energy, and a no is a downward feeling of energy flow. Some people have like a no is like a squeezing sensation in their brain. Other people it might.
I'll just share with you. I have the surge which comes out, and it's quite a heavy weight that comes out. It's my no. And I literally have an inward surge, which is very loving, a loving feeling, which is my yes.
Which is, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Learn your physical yes and no, because that will guide you through everything. It will guide you if you want to work with nature, if you want to work with plants. Learn to trust your yes and your no. Can I use this? Can I pick this plant? It will teach you how to work with animals. It will teach you how to work with other human beings. It will teach you how to make decisions and choices in your life. So it's really important, I think, for the times that are ahead of us, to know your inner yes and no sensation.
That's
connect
brilliant.
with that and trust that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. How can people connect with you in a more contemporary, modern, technological sense?
So I have my website, which is heidimerika.com.au, and I'll be posting. I also have my Facebook is Heidi Merika Botanical. My Instagram is just Heidi Merika. So you can connect with me on all of those mediums. I've got a book that's coming out towards the end of the year. It's just in the process of being printed at the moment, which is called Wildcraft, The Science and Spirit of Wild Plants as Food and Medicine, which has all the research, but it also has all the plant spirit qualities as well. And so, that'll be out. Hopefully I'll have pre-orders up on the website in the next week or so for that, but it'll be out in October, November sometime.
Wow. So that's like a handbook that someone can carry around. I'm into mushrooms at the moment. So there are handbooks and various things for mushrooms.
Yes.
But this is one for wildflowers, plus their spiritual.
Exactly. So it's got the science, it's got how to identify them botanically, lots of beautiful color pictures, and the plant spirit messages as well.
Heidi, thank you so much indeed for giving us your precious time. I know that you're very much in demand at the moment with your public speaking, your personal consulting work, and of course, seminars and workshops. So I really want to thank you so much indeed, and just wish you all the very best of empowerment. And let's talk again, maybe in situ. Maybe we can do a little weed hunt together.
Yes, that'd be lovely.
And I'm sure that we'll be drawn together at that appropriate time. But in the meantime, just continue the great work. And thank you so much again for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.